The phase of its recognition through which we are now passing is a purely exoteric one of accustoming the general public to the fact of its existence. This has been brought about in three ways. 1. Through the constant use in all the Christian churches of the word Amen, which is a Western corruption of the AUM. The AUM is here the lowest aspect of the originating sound. 2. Through the emphasis laid in Masonry upon the lost word, thus subtly drawing the attention of humanity to the OM, the sound of the second aspect, the soul. 3. Through the growing emphasis laid by the many occult groups throughout the world upon the use of the OM, its frequent use by these groups in public, and by those intent upon meditation. The soundest approach is that of the Masonic tradition, because it deals primarily with the world of meaning and with the phase of the esoteric teaching. The use of the Amen in the ritual of the Christian Church will eventually be discouraged, because it is basically a materialistic affirmation, being usually regarded by the average churchgoer as setting the seal of divine approval upon his demand to the Almighty for protection, or for the supply of his physical necessities. All this is, therefore, related to the life of desire, of aspiration, of dualism and of request. It involves the attitude of giver and recipient. The AUM and the Amen are both of them an expression in sound of the principle of active intelligent substance in the divine manifestation, the third aspect, and have served human need in that phase of material and form development. I refer here also to the development of mind, or of the mental form. The personality as a whole, when perfected and brought under control of the soul, is the Word made flesh. The mass of aspirants and of disciples are today learning the meaning of the OM, which is not the Word made flesh, but the Word released from form, and expressing itself as soul-spirit and not as body-soul-spirit. It might, therefore, be said that 1. The AUM note that I separate each aspect of this triple sound, brings the soul-spirit aspect down onto the physical plane and anchors it there by the force of its outgoing vibration. Using a symbol to make my meaning clear, it is like a strong wind that pins a man against a wall and makes free effort difficult. It vivifies form. It intensifies the hold of matter upon the soul. It builds around the soul a confining prison, a prison of the senses. It is the sound of enchantment, the sound that is the source of glamour and of Maya. It is the great beguiling and deceptive energy, the note of the involutionary arc. In it are hid the secret of evil or matter, the uses of form, first as a prison, then as a training ground and as a field of experience, and finally as the expression for the manifestation of the Son of God. 2. The OM rightly sounded, releases the soul from the realm of glamour and of enchantment. It is the sound of liberation, the great note of resurrection and of the raising of humanity to the secret place of the Most High when all other words and sounds have failed. It is not a triple sound as is the AUM, but a dual sound, significant of the relation of spirit and soul, and of life and consciousness. This lost word, symbolic of the loss in the three worlds, typified by the degrees of the Blue Lodges in Masonry, must be recovered and is in process of discovery today. The mystics have sought after it. The Masons have preserved the tradition of its existence. The disciples and initiates of the world must demonstrate its possession. 3. The sound is the sole expression of the ineffable name, the secret appellation of the one in whom we live and move and have our being, and who is known to the Great White Lodge through this name. Remember always that name and form are synonymous terms in the occult teaching, and these two words hold the secret of manifestation. The goal of the initiate is identification with all forms of the divine life, so that he can know himself to be an integral part of that whole and can tune in on all states of divine awareness, knowing for himself, and not just theoretically, that they are also his own states of awareness. He can then penetrate into the divine arcana of knowledge, share in the divine omnipresence, and at will express the divine omniscience and prepare himself to manifest in full consciousness the divine omnipotence. I am using words which are futile, to convey the underlying meaning of the word. Understanding can only be arrived at when a man lives the word, hearing its soundless sound and breathing it forth in a vital life-giving breath to others. The masses are hearing the sound of the AUM and, in their higher brackets, are finding that AUM the expression of something from which they seek release. The aspirants and disciples of the world are hearing the OM, and in their personal lives the AUM and the OM are in conflict. This may represent a new idea to you, but it conveys an idea of an eternal fact. It may help you to gain an understanding of this phase, if I point out for you that for this first group the OM can be portrayed in the following symbol as expressing the material M nature, whereas the second group can be portrayed by the symbol M expressive of the soul enveloped in matter. You will see, therefore, how the teaching leads man progressively onward and how the occult science brings man in touch with great mental reversals and divine paradoxes. For eons the word of the soul and the sound of spiritual reality are lost. Today, the word of the soul is being found again, and with that finding the little self is lost in the glory and the radiance of the divine self. This discovery is consummated at the time of the third initiation. The initiate and the master, along with those of higher rank who are approaching identification with Shambhala, are steadily and ever more clearly hearing the sound emanating from the central spiritual sum and penetrating all forms of divine life upon our planet by our planetary logos, who hears it with clarity and with understanding the sound of the lowest syllable of the ineffable name of the one in whom all the planetary logoi live and move and have their being. For they are centers in the life, which is expressing itself through the medium of the solar system. You can see how little use there is in my enlarging further upon this. Its sole usefulness is to give an expanding impulse to the consciousness of the disciple, and to stir his imagination, the seed of the intuition, so that even whilst occupied in expressing the M, and then the M, he will be reaching out after the sound. Earlier I pointed out that the sound of the AUM, the sound of the OM and the sound itself are all related to vibration and to its differing and varied effects. The secret of the law of vibration is progressively revealed, as people learn to sound forth the word in its three aspects. Students would also do well to ponder on the distinction between the breath and the sound, between the process of breathing and of creating directed vibratory activity. The one is related to time and the other to space, and they are distinct from each other. And, as the old commentary puts it, the sound, the final and yet initiating sound, concerns that which is neither time nor space. It lies outside the manifested all, the source of all that is and yet is not. No thing. AAB. There are, therefore, great points of tension from which the sacred word, in its major aspects, goes forth. Let me list them for you. 1. The creative point of tension, the tension achieved by a planetary logos when he responds to the sound of the ineffable name and breathes it forth in his turn in three great sounds which make one sound on his own plane of expression, thus creating the manifested world, the impulse towards the unfoldment of consciousness, and the influence of life itself. This is the sound. 2. 7 points of tension on the downward or involutionary arc. These produce the 7 planets, the 7 states of consciousness, and the expression of the 7 ray impulses. This constitutes the sevenfold AUM of which the ageless wisdom takes note. It is related to the effect of spirit or life upon substance, thus originating form and creating the prison of the divine life. 3. The AUM itself, or the Word made flesh. This creates finally a point of tension in the fourth kingdom in nature, at which point the evolutionary cycle becomes possible and the first dim note of the OM can be faintly heard. In the individual man, this point is reached when the personality is an integrated and functioning whole, and the soul is beginning to control it. It is an accumulative tension arrived at through many lives. This process is expressed in the Master's archives as follows. You must remember that these symbols are an attempt on my part to translate ancient signatures in modern Occidental type. The only one which is the same in all languages is, esoterically, the AUM4. Then comes a point of tension from which the man eventually achieves liberation from the three worlds, and stands as a free soul. He is then the point within the circle, the point indicating the point of tension from which he now works, and the circle the sphere of his self-initiated activity. I need not carry the story further. From tension to tension the initiate passes just as do all human beings, aspirants, disciples and the lower grades of initiates. From one expansion of consciousness to another they go until the third initiation is undergone, and points of tension, qualified by intention and purpose, supersede all previous efforts and the will aspect begins to control. Here, briefly, is a fresh slant upon the familiar theme of the word, a theme preserved in some form by all the world religions, but a theme which, like all else, has been so materialized that it is the task of the hierarchy to restore the knowledge of its meaning, of its threefold application, and its involutionary and evolutionary significances. Students would do well to remember that its sounding forth vocally upon the physical plane means little. The important factors are to sound it silently, inaudibly and within the head. Then, having done so, to hear it reverberate there and to recognize that the self-initiated sound brought forth from a point of tension is a part of the original sound as it takes form as a word. When a man perfectly empresses the AUM, he can then sound the OM with effectiveness from progressive points of tension, until the third initiation. Then the effect of the OM is such that the personality as a separate identity disappears, the soul emerges in all its glory, and the first faint sound of the originating sound breaks upon the ear of the transfigured initiate. This is the voice referred to in the biblical account of the transfiguration. This voice says, "This is my beloved Son." The initiate registers the fact that he has been accepted by Shambhala, and has made his first contact with the planetary logos, the Hierophant, the initiator at the third initiation, just as the Christ, the Master of all the Masters, is the initiator and the Hierophant at the first two initiations. The word, however, with which we are now dealing is not the sacred word itself, but a signal or sound of acceptance. It is translated in this rule by the phrase, accepted as a group. This refers to aggregates and blended combinations through which the soul in relation to personalities, the monad in relation to the spiritual triad, the master in relation to his ashram, and Shambhala in relation to the hierarchy, can work, expressing plan in the initial stages of contact, and purpose in the final stages. Bear in mind that the analogy holds true all the way through. A personality is an aggregate of forms and of substantial lives which, when fused and blended, present a unified sum total, animated by desire, or aspiration, by plan or purpose, and functioning in its place under the